born in Ottawa here 51 years ago. Now, I give a lot of talks in the States, so if you do the U.S. equation, I was born about 37 U.S. years ago. So if you're from Oregon, you'll get that. So kind of works in my favor, you know what I'm saying? So anyway, a little bit about my story. It's similar to a lot of people here that had an abandonment wound. I had an abandonment wound as well. My mother, as soon as I was born, when she found out she was pregnant, she was from Manitoulin Island, and she came to Ottawa. She didn't want her family to know about it. And so I was put up for adoption right away. But the challenge was I wasn't adopted, and what happened is I went from foster home to foster home to foster home. And then I was adopted in a place called Sudbury. I don't know if you ever heard of Sudbury. All right. And then I was raised in Timmins, and I'm kind of glad there's nothing further north because I was kind of moving in the right direction. So anyways, that's where I was raised. My dad was electrician, and my mom never worked outside of the home. But my childhood was plagued with a lot of abuse, a lot of physical abuse, emotional abuse, mental abuse. The physical abuse was probably not the worst thing I dealt with. It was probably the mental abuse and the emotional abuse. Matter of fact, even when my dad, if he was present, many times he was emotionally absent. Showed no interest in me from anything, from activities, anything I ever did. There was no communication. What's interesting is I heard, not Jessica, but did I got it right? Jasmine. There you go. I had it right. No. Jasmine's story. You hear the word a lot for many of us. It's called abandonment. And the abandonment wound actually sends a message to the little girl, the little boy. And what it sends a message is that you don't belong or you're not good enough. And what happens is we as kids, we kind of start to believe a lie and we start to cope with the lie. And so the challenge with it is, that was my take was, I was sent a message that really at the end of the day, you don't belong anywhere. And so anyways, that message was reinforced not only from the adoptive mother, was given to me from my birth mother, but the physical abuse continued, leather belt beatings, cracked ribs, and everything continued. Probably the most lingering effect would have been the mental abuse. The day my mother told me, the only reason why we adopted you is because nobody else wanted you. You know, the day that my dad would take me to a strip club at 20-some below zero, leave me in a truck outside in the parking lot for 2 hours. And going through this stuff, and what happens is we do, as kids, is we start to think, well, why can't I be from a normal family? And we start piecing together parts of our lives, and we just try to learn how to function. You know, I remember as every Canadian boy wants to play, I wanted to play ice hockey. But we couldn't afford it, so I kind of played. I had a hockey stick, so I played boot hockey. And the day I walked home, my dad was hammered. He grabbed my hockey stick, and he took it, and he cut it up in little pieces in front of me and threw it in the wood stove. And the message it always sent was, you're not good enough, and you don't belong. See, from the message that communicated to me was, based on that was, I'm on my own. And whenever we go through pain, the challenge is as kids, we don't recognize it as pain. We don't. We just think it's normal. But what happens is we have to learn how to medicate that pain in our lifetime. A lot of us, as you're going to hear a lot of stories, and I appreciate the transparency of this environment that John and Vicki created and the leadership here, is it doesn't matter what your counterfeit was. It doesn't matter if it's cocaine, any kind of drugs. It doesn't matter if it's alcohol, sexual impurity. Really, at the end of the day, it's a counterfeit that you're using to medicate that deep, deep pain inside. And until you catch yourself in an environment like this, where you can actually sit and feel like you can be trusted, you can be heard, and you can hear from other people that have been through the same thing, but today they're surrendered and they're changing, that gave me hope. That gave me victory. That's what I needed. And I was that same person. How I dealt with my pain in my life was, I was on my own at age 16 years of age. I lived in a little room. I tell people that was about 3 feet by 8 feet. It was so small I had to walk out of the room just to change my mind. Okay? But how I dealt with things is I drank heavy. I was a heavy drinker on weekends, a little bit through the week. But really how I medicated myself is I went from women to women to women. And I went to the women to take from the women. And God never intended that. He wanted the women to offer strength to her. And when you go out and you take from the counterfeit, it left me in a deep emptiness, a deep void, a deep vacuum. It didn't matter what I did, nothing could fill that emptiness, that hole that I had. And so, you know, maybe some of you've in the midst of bad addictions. I'm just telling you that, you know what, tonight you're in a good place. You're in a safe place. And the fact of the matter is, just because the counterfeit gets time, you know, it kind of revisits you, it doesn't mean you can't have victory in your life. You know what the enemy wants to tell us is that you need to be perfect. And you don't have to be perfect. You have victory already if you know how to surrender to Christ, okay? And so I know when I first heard the word, when I first heard Christianity, I didn't buy in it. I didn't believe it. I thought, you know, there's got to be another way. There's got to be some self-help. And I want to let you know that, you know, what John and Vicky and the leadership here and what they do in terms of how they, first of all, just to trust them. Just trust. I never trusted an adult at one point in my life. I would never divulge who I was because the rejection in my life was too big. And I didn't want to be rejected again. And so before that, I know that this is a safe place. I know that this is a place where, you know, in my situation, I had to get into a group of 6 to 8 people. You know, back then, you could call it a mentoring group. You can call it a coaching group, leadership group, discipleship group, men's group, whatever you want to call it. I know at first I would just say, I'm going to keep my mouth shut before they throw me out here. I had to, first of all, figure out, can I trust them? Are they safe? Are they going to judge me based on what I've been through? And what I had to do is learn how to trust the people that were around me. And then what happened is they worked on introducing me to Jesus, to the higher power. And when I heard that, I said, there's got to be another way, and I fought it. And I want to let you know, I don't know where you're from. I know this, though. Every single one of us in this room is on a journey. You're on either the beginning of a journey. You could be maybe well through the journey. Like, you know, I'm 51. I've been on this journey now since 2001. So 17, 18 years I've been on this journey. But I do want to let you know that you can have full power over those counterfeits in Christ. You can have full victory in Christ because he said he's come to give you life, but abundant life. And life won't suck anymore. Life is going to be full of joy. And what's going to happen is, I love what John and Vicky and the leadership is doing, because he walks in authority, because he's walked in your shoes, he's been through it, so that he can help you through it. And that's the beauty of what you've gotten in the leadership. So I just want to thank you for having me here tonight. I'm about 9 minutes, John, because I know 10 minutes he was coming to give me the little coat hanger. But appreciate you having me. We'll talk to you soon. Bless you.